One of the distinct memories this 7-year-old girl had of herself was going to see a movie at the DeLUXE Theater on Lyons Avenue. Anyone that knows anything about Lyons Avenue in Houston, Texas, knows that Lyons Avenue was the destination where everything and everyone worked together, played together, and enjoyed the DeLUXE Theater. Imagine a 7-year-old sitting in a dark room, dark as midnight, and all of a sudden, a few lights show a big, huge black screen. Nothing like a television screen that she had been accustomed to. But this was the first time the 7-year-old saw a real live movie screen in a real live theater from 1957 to 2025. This 7-year-old crossed paths with the DeLUXE Theater many, many times. There were no Mickey Mouse clubs. There were no cartoons, not for us. We saw adult theater, adult movies rather. And one I can distinctly remember, yes, at 7. One was Cat on a Hot Tin Roof with Elizabeth Taylor and Paul Newman. I also saw a movie that was really strange, and it came back to me later in years that this movie is basically what's going on right now. It was called The Carpetbaggers. And it was about the Southern infiltration of people from one area of the country to another. War reels in between these movies, or at some point, and in the movies, we were shown war reels. Huge planes with commentary, speaking about the war. So when my 7th grade reading teacher assigned the class to go downtown to see a movie entitled Othello, I was game. I was elated because I was accustomed to going to the movies at the DeLUXE Theater. I didn't know the premise. I didn't know the characters. I didn't know the plot. I didn't know anything about Shakespeare, actually. But what this educator did was she sent us on a journey to help us to understand there's a transition going on, and it's going to have something to do with blacks and whites. So when I went to see this movie downtown, I had no problems getting into the movie. No one stopped me. No one talked about going in the back door. I did not experience any of that. From that moment on, I was hooked on theater, film, all things concerning that medium. And I crossed paths with the DeLUXE Theater many, many, many times afterwards. My experience beginning with and at the DeLUXE Theater was the platform that would catapult me to so many, many, many distinctive moments. Integration allowed us to go downtown to the movie houses and to other places, and the DeLUXE Theater sat dormant for years. I believe in 2015, the DeLUXE Theater was reborn, and I was privileged and honored enough to work with the greeting and the activities and all the excitement of the DeLUXE Theater reopening. It was a grand, grand, grand day, and the whole neighborhood came out. So I have a rich, rich journey of defining moments at and with the DeLUXE Theater.
I have come to believe over and over again that what is most important to me must be spoken, made verbal and shared, even at the risk of having it bruised or misunderstood. Audrey. We do not have to romanticize our past in order to be aware of how it seeds our present. We do not have to suffer the waste of an amnesia that robs us of the lessons of the past, rather than permit us to read them with pride, as well as deep understanding. Audrey Lorde. From South Park Village, Concrete came this Yellow Rose of Texas. Good evening, Fifth Ward. I am Alexis. If you can hear me, say woo, woo. Listen, I am so grateful that y'all are here tonight. And hello, live streaming. We're live streaming as well. Okay, I was looking for my camera there. Hey, fam out there, listen. I love this Audre Lorde quote, and I actually venerate her as a poet and a prophet. There was something very important that she said that helps me to show up in spaces like as I am. One of the things that she said that is very relevant for me tonight, and I think in most instances when I'm producing live events, she talked about how often when you basically show up as yourself, you make room for people to judge, to poke, to gauge, to do all of those things. And so I want to go ahead and admit that tonight, my preference would have been to been in a pair of short shorts and some platform shoes and a jacket like that when I was producing out in Los Angeles and on the East Coast. That was what I showed up because I'm like, listen, after all that leg work, I want to show off my legs. I'm just being really, really clear. But my mother, for one of my last events on the East Coast, she actually, she was watching me get dressed. And she said, now, why are those shorts so short? And I was like, because they was too long when I bought them. So I cut them. And sis did not like that, but she couldn't do anything because, you know, I'm grown. And I was out, you know, on the East Coast doing my thing. But now I'm in Texas where she is. And so when I gave her the HMAC t-shirt, she was one of the greeters today that let everyone in. And so when I gave her the t-shirt, and I was like, okay, now this is what you're wearing. She said, okay, now what you wearing? And I said, a blue dress. And she said, oh, okay. So I realized that that's a big thing for her because her, you know, the women she owned the finance ministry with her First Lady Johnson and Sister Teresa. Hey, how y'all doing? I know that's who it is. I got on the blue dress. Anyway, I am so grateful to have y'all out here tonight. Thank you so much for coming out to restory the story of Fifth Ward. And incidentally, if you're looking at this sandal, the thing broke on top of that. So I'm just saying, I'm saying all of this just in case there's somebody that's like paying that close attention to what I got on. That's a real thing for me. But thank y'all so much for coming out. My mother was the one who did show up, and she has the HMAC t-shirt, and she was probably a lot of fun greeting folks, you know, before the doors of the theater opened. But she was wearing the HMAC swag, and that is because those 5 letters, HMAAC, they are the sponsor for this night's event. And this is an exhibition in the community sponsored by the Houston Museum of African American Culture. And I would like to bring out the COO, Chief Operating Officer, Ms. Davinia Reed. Is Davinia, you back there? Where is she? You know what? Where is Davinia? That was so funny. She was like, I'm not going to be up there saying all the stuff that Dr. Guest says. I was like, you don't have to. I need you to show up as Davinia Reed. There she is. Please give her a round of applause. Yes, thank you so much for this opportunity. When I first pitched this idea to Dr. Guest, I was just returning to Houston, and I said, you know, you are the CEO of the African American Culture, of the Houston Museum of African American Culture. And so I know that it's a museum where we have exhibitions inside of the museum, but it's also a museum where we do exhibitions in the community. And so I pitched this, and even though they were already done with their programming, he actually called Vicki Meek, who was the public artist who had introduced us, and said, doggone it, I gotta go get Lexi some money to do this event. So I am so grateful. If you have some words for us.
All I would like to say is HMAC is definitely a museum that's in the community. If you have not had the opportunity to come see us, feel free to stop by at 4807 Caroline Street. As far as restoring the Fifth Ward, we were delighted to have Alexis join us as the guest curator because we had many talks about storytelling and how our stories are told and that they're told the proper way. So when she came along with her project, it was perfect timing. So when Dr. Guest said, I'm gonna go out and find some money, and I was like, okay, go ahead. But we're excited. I'm excited to see the storytellers. I'm excited about this project. I know it'll be amazing because Sunnyside was amazing.
Yes. We started with Sunnyside.
Yeah, we started with Sunnyside.
Yes.
Even though, you know, my hood is Missouri City. I guess you wouldn't consider that a hood, but I mean, that's where I grew up. But we started in Sunnyside, and now we're here in the 5th Ward.
Yes, and not only did they sponsor the storytelling event, there was also a special storytelling workshop that was made available to 5th Ward residents and people who secured a ticket for tonight's event. And Florence Carter's, Miss Carter, are you here? Yes, there she is. Okay, Miss Carter, we have a gift for you. It's right here. So here's what it's started. She arrived at the workshop. She's the first person to arrive at the workshop, and she arrived about 30 minutes early. Fortunately, I was already set up and I was ready. And we just had the most delightful conversation. It was just her growing up in 5th Ward and her being very excited about the stories that were here tonight. And so I said, okay, Ms. Carter, just so you know, you're taking this workshop, so at some point you're gonna be on the mic too. So I need you to pay attention to everything you don't like happening here, Mrs. Carter. You'll be able to say, okay, I'm gonna change that when I get to the mic, because you are certainly en route. Please give her a round of applause and thank you. That to you. Okay, restorying the story of 5th Ward. Restorying is a social science methodology. And it basically means that the way that they have been telling a particular story, not only are they not telling the whole story, sometimes they're not even telling a chapter, it's like they're telling a scene, and they're making it the full story. And that is problematic. And so restorying as a social science, as a methodology, is really about us having to tell the story in the proper way. And I think the best person that I've ever heard frame the restorying methodology, like without the whole fancy language, was my mama's baby sister, my crazy Amy. Now, anybody who would come to her trying to tell her anything, she said, well, she would stop and she said, hey, look here. What you say to me ain't gonna stay with me. So tell it right so I can carry it right. Not carry it right. Tonight, all of the storytellers are prepped to tell the story right, and the intention is that you hear it and that you carry it right. That is how we are, that's how we've set up this tonight's event. And so I believe that you are going to have an amazing time, and I'm personally committed to restorying stories, the right narratives, because I understand what it's like when the story is not told correctly. As a matter of fact, I personally have a 40-year misunderstanding. It happened spring of 1983. I was in the 8th grade and I was going to my 8th grade dance. And there's a picture of me on the screen from that night. I was excited to be attending the 8th grade dance, excited to be graduating. The problem was my dress. It was a floor-length satin gown with a lace crop top. And you see, I have my little date there, my little boyfriend, Nathan. And the problem with that dress was that the year before, spring 1982, when Nathan was an 8th grader for the first time, I was his date. And so that was that was the style in 1982, but here we are in 1983. And the style is actually tea-length ruffle dresses. That's what the women were, that's what the girls were wearing. Like, the Pally World catalog, the Foley's Department Store catalog, they said that they give spring 83 supposed to be in tea-length ruffle dresses. And there I was in this, floor-length satin gown with this crop top, the lace crop top, and I just felt dated. And so I went to my mama and I was like, Mama, this ain't the style. And sis was real impressed. She was like, that's your dress. And I was like, but Mama, the style is like tea-length dresses with ruffles, like tea-length dress. And so we went back and forth. I went back and forth. She was real quiet. And when I finally just, put my foot down, I was like, listen, I like this. I need to wear the latest style. Like, this is my 8th grade dance. And she said, okay, well, don't go. And I was like, well, listen, I'm not repeating the 8th grade like Nathan. Like, Nathan had 2 runs at it. I'm only doing this one time. So I need to just go ahead and just, suck it up. And the good thing is that no one that was at the dance the year before saw me in the dress. And so that wasn't even, so it wasn't about people saying, oh, she got the same dress on. They weren't there. It was literally, the style was a T-length ruffle dress, and I was not going to be in style. But my mother said, if you want to go, you got to dress. If you don't want to go, you can stay home. I chose to go. Nathan and I walk into the dance, and he is, we're both, you know, excited to be there. I'm self-conscious, but when I'm self-conscious, I don't shrink. I stand tall, shoulders back, I walk in, I own the space. So that's what I did. And when we walked in, everyone got quiet. Everyone was watching us. We went to the photography section, we took our picture, and then we went to the grazing table and we got, you know, frog legs, like the delicate frog legs taste like chicken, just FYI. I found it out the year earlier. But that was like a really fancy kind of thing. And so our you know, the space where we held the event, they served frog legs. And so we, you know, got some frog legs and got some drinks, and we were dancing on the dance floor and, you know, pretty much having a good time. 40 years later, I was having drinks with a friend, December 2023, as a matter of fact. I had come home for Christmas. I was having drinks with my friend Renee, who was my friend from middle school. And we got to reminiscing. And then we got on the 8th grade dance. And Renee said, Alexis, you walked in that room and you looked like a goddess. And I was like, y'all was staring at me. She was like, yeah, because we all had on the T-length ruffle dresses, and you show up and you just own the room. And I was like, but didn't nobody talk to me? I was like, who talks to goddesses? Like, we don't know what to say to y'all. And I said to her, do you know that for 40 years, I have carried this idea that somehow I was a pariah, or I was, you know, like that you didn't really like me, that I was, you know, my mother's inability to buy me the T-length ruffle dress was a thing when everybody else had it. Like, why didn't she have it? Like, I carried that. I was like, so I wonder, what other things have we heard? What other misunderstandings are we carrying? Tonight, we're going to correct some of those misunderstandings, particularly as it pertains to Fifth Ward. And they're going to tell it right. And what is your responsibility? Care it right. Okay, here we go. First up, most of the storytellers this evening are sons and daughters of the Fifth Ward soil, planted here several generations ago. But our first storyteller was transplanted here. Here to share a neighbor story, please welcome Emile Browne.
It's January 2007. I have $17 in the bank. I'm also in the 8th month of an unrequested vacation. But I have rent paid, a car full of gas, a cell phone, and I have an interview. I walk into that interview with the enthusiasm of a man riding the rails between housed and unhoused. I walked out of that interview knowing that I might be unhoused. I immediately called a very good friend of mine and I said, you know what? I overdid it. He said, what happened? See, I have a thing with vocabulary. It's not that my vocabulary is bad, it's actually quite good. The problem with my vocabulary is that I use all the words, the big words, the old words, the often not used words, and I use all those words in the interview. And the problem with that is when you sometimes wear your knowledge on your sleeves, you're not always received well. So I'm leaving that interview and I'm like, I'm about to be homeless. But I get home after the phone call, and 24 hours later, that cell phone is still working, thankfully. And I get a phone call because I got the job. There is relief because now I can still stay in a house. On my first day to the job, get out the car, take a couple of steps up, and I said, you know what, Emile? This is not a career move. This is a finance opportunity. This is not about you getting a promotion. This is not about you making friends. This is about figuring out what you're going to do with the rest of your life. Because you in corporate America, y'all not getting along, bro. Y'all not getting along. So I go into the job and I work. And while I'm there, I'm figuring out, let's see, what am I gonna do? I tried interning as a restaurateur. That didn't work. I tried catering. That too did not work. I tried woodworking. That didn't work. I even tried to live my Ralph Lauren story. I made bracelets, cufflinks, and pocket squares. That didn't work. However, I get another phone call because my cell phones, they're working now. I got a job. And my boy says, hey, it's my birthday, let's go to Miami. I say, bet. He says, what I need you to do though, I need you to take the pictures on the trip. This is great for me. I'm an introvert. I don't really like the mingling and so forth. So taking pictures means I get to be there and I don't really have to interact. So I'm taking the pictures. One picture in particular. We're at the hotel, the National on South Beach. One of the guys on the trip, his name is Marquis. He's in the pool. Marquis is this tall, but he's fit. All the cuts, chest, everything. He's in the pool, arms spread out, head tilted back, his ball like mine. His brand new Carrera sunglasses. The sun is hitting sunglasses just so. I creep down low. I take my first amazing photo. It's so amazing. I get back home. I turn into a magazine cover. I'm looking at this thing like, oh, you got something going on here. Mind you, outside of that, I've always wanted to have a camera because I wanted to be like Jack Lowe. I don't know if you know who he is. You might be familiar with the Kennedys. All of those beautiful pictures you see of the Kennedys hanging out, running around the family compound, that was Jack Lowe. I want to have those kinds of photos of my wife and my kids. So I bought a camera. I took that camera with me everywhere. The museum, birthday parties, store activations, all the things. If you know Emile, you know he likes to do things at a commercial grade. So I'm taking pictures like a professional, not like a dude who's practicing for wife and kids. What that led to was that people started asking me, how much do you charge to take photos? Turns out, people pay quite a lot of money for it. So now I have this job, and I got this side hustle where I'm making the money. I'm like, that. And I'm getting good at this thing. Figuring out the camera, it is real hard to figure that stuff out. Figuring it out, I get a little cocky. I said, you know what? I want to go to Fashion Week in New York and take pictures. I get to Fashion Week through networking and hard work. I'm in the risers taking photos on the runway and living it up. I get back. I said, you know what? Let's ratchet up a bit. I said, I want to go to Paris Fashion Week. I book a show to shoot Paris Fashion Week after only going to one Fashion Week. But I missed it. Missed the show. But I'm in Paris, so I'm taking these amazing photos, of which I've sold, so I'm very grateful for that. But while I'm in Paris, I get a phone call from a colleague at work. He says, Emile, we're gonna have layoffs. Now, I've been laid off and fired a million times, so I don't necessarily care. I just need to know how much money is I gonna get. Now, keep in mind, I've been saving up because this photography thing is kind of taking off, so I'm saving up because I'm gonna plan to quit anyway. I get back to America, get to the office, Emile, can you come in? We'd like to talk to you. Sure, get in the office. I don't know if you've been laid off before, but if you haven't, the conversation goes something like this. Well, insert your name here, Emile, we're going through some changes, and we're gonna have to let you go. That's fine. How much is I gonna get? So between my vacation payout, my retention bonus, my savings, and the severance, I had enough based on my budget to never have to make another check again for 3 years. So I'm like, well, shoot, that's enough runway to figure this thing out. So I started doing my photography thing. This is great. I'm taking all the photos, and I'm loving it. And quite frankly, my camera is taking me so many more places than my finance degree ever did. So I'm loving it. But in the process of doing that, I told you I had a budget. My apartment complex, they're like, yeah, we're gonna need to raise that rent. But we got rats in the building. Y'all ain't upgrading. What am I paying you for? So I tell the homie who invited me to Miami to take pictures, I'm like, look, they try to raise my rent. He's like, I tell you what, check this out. This same friend that went to Miami with, he has since gotten married to a young woman that I helped him meet. I helped arrange the whole thing. Not just me, it was somebody else. It wasn't all me, it was somebody else too. We helped. They now live in this place called 5th Ward. But they want to live in 3rd Ward. They also don't want to deal with renters. And I understand. Renters can be a bit much. But it's like, look, we're going to go to 3rd Ward. Would you be willing to live in our house for the same rent? Sir, absolutely. It's nothing like going from a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom, rat-infested apartment building, not in my apartment, in the garbage chute. You can still hear it, but not in my apartment. Going from that to 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, garage, separated family home in 5th Ward in the bottoms. I'm like, oh, blessings. Now with the 3 bedrooms, it's just me. So you got the master upstairs, but downstairs, I got my studio for my photography and my podcasting, and then I have my office with my rising desk and all my big screens. It's great, and I'm loving this. And the great thing about what I do, it affords me the opportunity to sit, to think, and to breathe. Because when you're in corporate America, part of the beauty of the arrangement is they want your whole life. And I get it, you build a business, you want people to come and get you the money. But with running your own shop, I got a chance to really figure out who I was. 5th Ward gave me that opportunity to sit, to think, to breathe. And now, as I look to figure out what I really want to do is to farm, grow the food, and raise the livestock, because all that corporate stuff isn't for me. As I look to transition into my next stage, I'm very grateful for 5th Ward for that opportunity to sit, to think, to breathe.
While doing community engagement and listening to the different stories of 5th Ward, this next storyteller was one of the first names given. Here to tell an entrepreneur story, please welcome Keith Hawkins.
I don't know why I left, but I know that I was wrong, and it won't be long till I get on back home. Those were some of the amazing cadences that I got to learn as a drill sergeant in military police after spending 10 years in the Army, in which I loved and served. It was some of the most amazing times. I got to travel the world, see the country, and do different fun events with a lot of great friends that I call great friends still to this day. And we created an amazing community, one that I will never forget. But during that time, I also realized after those 10 years, there was something that I was missing, and it was still missing home. So after 10 years of being in the military, I decided to come back home. And one of the things that I realized while creating that community and in the military was I learned community right here in 5th Ward, specifically on Limes Avenue. Limes Avenue was a place where my mother was an x-ray tech at St. Elizabeth Hospital. When I was a young kid, I used to be in the x-ray tech room bothering her because she didn't have a babysitter some days. And I'd be running through the hospital, smelling the fresh scents of linen and all the smells of the hospital and trying to just stay out of her way. But then there was also those moments where my dad, right further down the line on Lyons Avenue, was singing, and he was a part of a gospel quartet here locally. He used to sing on Saturday and Sundays at True Level Hall. Some of you may remember that. Well, in True Level Hall, we'd go in there and I'd listen to them singing, then I'll go downstairs and watch all the guys come out and watch my dad interact with folks. But it was all a part of a greater community. I'll never forget the time when my mom had to work and my cousin would come, or we would go to my cousin's grandmother's house on Cage Street, and we would hang out at Mama Dea's house because mom couldn't take care of us or be at the hospital. So we would go hang out over there. Fifth Ward created so many amazing communities for me, or this community created so many fun memories for me, it was almost hard to let go. So after 10 years of being in the military, I decided it was time for me to come home. Didn't have a clue what I was gonna do, but I had a good friend of mine who was still at home who called me up and he says, hey man, I know of a great company that's hiring, they're doing coffee. And I go, what do you mean they're doing coffee? Because in 10 years in the military, I had never drank a cup of coffee. Because what you just heard me say in those cadences, literally, we would wake up every day at 4 o'clock in the morning without any coffee. We do our PT, we get out, we go run, we exercise, and come back. I didn't need coffee. I came to this guy and he says, hey, listen, there's this amazing opportunity, man. Listen, you need a job? And I said, yeah, I do need a job. I'm not gonna lie to you. So I got the job, and for 6 years, I did coffee, selling it, delivering it, all of the things, because I love to connect with people and talk, but I didn't drink coffee, refused to drink it. So at one point, an older gentleman who was getting ready to leave the company pulled me to the side and he says, hey, listen, I want to talk to you about something. He says, if you're going to be in this company for any length of time, or if you want to stay in coffee for any length of time, it's important that you educate yourself. And this is the first gentleman who ever pulled me to the side and talked to me, a young African-American or older African-American gentleman. He says, learn your skill and be great at your skill. I was much younger then, just making a paycheck so I can hang out. And then I listened. And so I went to my supervisor. I said, I want to learn. I want to be better. Military background, drill sergeant, leadership, all of those things. I want to learn. I want to get better. So he said, cool. They made me a manager after a year. So I'm 7 years in now and I'm a supervisor, and they invite me to go to an event, which is a global event in the coffee industry. And they said it's a trade show. They said, hey, you're going this weekend, go hang out and get to learn more about the industry. I walked into the room, and much to my surprise, I was the only black face in the space of about 1,000 people on the showroom floor, in behind the booths, and I'm walking and people are looking at me as if I had just walked into a rally. So I'm looking around and I'm kind of feeling out of place. But at the same time, I'm feeling this weird feeling of like, I'm the only one. And for about 17 years later, these types of events would continue to happen, where I'd show up, be in this space, and then slowly but surely the numbers would change, but not by much. And then one day it hit me, and the day that it hit me was in May, or Memorial Day of 2020, after the George Floyd murder, and I'm sitting here talking to some friends in coffee, and I noticed that the coffee industry had begun to, all of the leaders in coffee had begun to do a thing that we now know was just performative. They began to talk about all of the things that they realized that were wrong in specialty coffee, and they were gonna try to make a difference and fix it. And as I'm watching this, I also realized all of those times, the 17 years previously, that I had gone into these places to show up, and there were no representations of people that looked like me. So when I walked in and I'm talking to my friend and I said, man, this is all just performative. There are no changes that are taking place in coffee that are making a difference. And just for those who are watching and going, what difference is it making coffee? So coffee is the second largest traded commodity in the world. $433 billion annually, only behind oil and gas. That's how much money is accrued in coffee. Yet 2.5 billion cups are consumed every day around the world. almost 300 million are consumed right here in the United States daily, yet we still don't have the proper representation to show in coffee for African American and for brown people. So when I walked into this space and I saw this and I said, something has to change. Because for the first time, the light came on for me that made me realize I was suffering from PTSD. No, not from the military. Post-traumatic slave disorder.
Okay.
I had a sense of feeling like I was making a difference, or I was doing something with my life because I was the one of, or if not the only person in the room. I was suffering from imposter syndrome, if I was being honest. So the reality is I had to deal with that internally and then make a decision. And so I prayed about it and I said, God, what can I do in this very moment for the industry that I so love, that has taken care of me so greatly? And what I did was I stepped out and I said, it's time to make a difference. So I created this organization. It's called the Color of Coffee Collective. It's a nonprofit organization where our goal is simply to create diversity and equity and inclusion in every space of coffee, and mainly also to teach young men and young girls from minority communities and underserved communities about specialty coffee. Using coffee as a vehicle, we were able to teach coffee camps. Coffee camps are programs designed that we take young men and women and we teach them the introduction to coffee, and we show them everything there is to know about coffee, but more importantly, give them life skills that can change their entire lives and they can be transferred into other communities or other trades. And I'm so excited tonight to announce that we were working with UEI, the Urban Enrichment Institute, thank you, the Urban Enrichment Institute right here in Fifth Ward, where we took some young men who come to after school programs, and we have been training them since 2023. And for the first time ever in specialty coffee, over all of this time, we're taking these young men, and on November the 5th, we're dropping for the first time ever a specialty coffee designed and created by these young men for this community. It's called 1866. 1866 coffee will release on November the 5th. 1866, you ask, why is it called 1866? It is the year that this community was founded by formerly enslaved Black people. The coffee that we'll be using is an Ethiopian coffee. The Ethiopian coffee is the first coffee ever, the first place coffee was ever discovered was in Ethiopia. I want our kids to understand the roots by which they are learning they run deep. And they're drinking and producing products that you can be very proud of. As a community, I beg you, I implore you, November the 5th, support the 1866 coffee. Lastly, I'll say this. When I was in the military, as I told you before, did not drink coffee. Today, I drink it every day. But more importantly, I use it as a vehicle to teach and educate and create opportunities for our communities.
Now, this next storyteller sent me some fabulous photos and newspaper clippings of the work and legacy of her family, how most of them were copyright protected. And I reached out to see if I could get clearance in time, but that didn't happen. And when I mentioned that to her, she said, oh, well, I'll just send you the pictures that we have around our house. So you're about to see the fancy people from which she heralds, but you're also about to hear her heart for business and commerce in Fifth Ward. Here to tell a community leader's story, please welcome Ms. Bridgette Dorian.
Okay.
Mom was a nurse at the historical St. Elizabeth Hospital. Mom's nursing career included St. Luke's, Urban, and Methodist Hospital. She decided to switch careers and become a certified mental health social worker, employed at Harris County Mental Health and Mental Retardation. Her locations with Harris County included the Lowndes Avenue Professional Building, the county's downtown location, and lastly, Ripley House, currently known as Baker Ripley on Navigation, where she retired. Dad attended the Texas State University for Negroes, currently known as Texas Southern University, studying and later certified in shoe repair. Dad and his brother Clarence opened C&L Shoe and Boot Repair and eventually opened separate establishments. Dad remained in Fifth Ward on Lyons Avenue, with one location being 1 block east of St. Elizabeth Hospital, and eventually moved to 4911 Lyons, a few blocks east of St. Elizabeth Hospital. My parents' paths eventually crossed, working in close proximity and both attending our Mother of Mercy Catholic Church. They eventually married, had 4 kids, and adopted 2 kids. Dad's commitment to the Fifth Ward community included employing young men from the community to work in the shoe shop after school. A few criteria for employment included attending Sunday church services, performing well academically in school, and staying out of trouble. He employed over 500 young men and continued to support them in college, trade schools, or wherever their productive lives continued after high school. A few of the notable young employees were the late Congressman Mickey Leland, the late Precinct 1 Commissioner El Franco Lee, U.S. Representative Craig Washington, State Representative Harold Dutton, and the late boxer George Foreman. All lived within blocks of the shoe shop. Young George Foreman had a discipline problem, struggled with channeling his anger. Dad encouraged him to consider boxing, a suggestion that molded him into one of the greatest professional boxers of our time. In appreciation for Dad's mentorship, George Foreman sported a robe for his very first fight that included the words C&L Shoe Shop Papaloo stitched in the back of his robe. Growing up in Fifth Ward in the late 60s, we witnessed residents leaving Fifth Ward and moving to the suburbs. My parents were often asked why they chose to remain in Fifth Ward, raise kids in Fifth Ward, and continue to operate the shoe shop in the community. Their reply was always, Fifth Ward isn't raising our kids, we are.
Okay.
And C&L Shoe Shop will remain centrally located in this community we choose to serve and make an impact. The shoe shop remained a viable part of the Fifth Ward community for 50 years, earning Papa Lou, as my dad was so affectionately referenced, the Jefferson Award, a national service award for community service presented by KTRK Channel 13. Dad passed away in 1991, 34 years ago. We continued the day-to-day operations of the shoe shop for 10 years until 2001. My community service began 13 years ago when asked to be a board member for the Fifth Ward Community Redevelopment Corporation. The board membership awakened and elevated a passion in me for the Fifth Ward community that I didn't realize existed. However, as surprising as the desire to serve the community was to me, some residents in the community said, of course the desire is there, you're Papa Lou's daughter. In 2018, I was asked to join a committee of the Fifth Ward CRC to determine if there was an interest in small businesses in starting a Chamber of Commerce in Fifth Ward. After several networking events, we realized there definitely was an interest. 5 small business owners, including myself, began meeting to determine the existing small businesses and entrepreneurs interested in opening businesses in the Fifth Ward community. After strategizing for months, I suggested a soft launch. The breakfast launch was a huge success as we unexpectedly signed members on that day and sponsors. First order of business was to elect officers and board of directors. I was in favor of whomever the founding members chose for president, among other officers. They unanimously chose me before the official election meeting. I have never desired to lead an organization, but if I had to, perhaps my passion for this community would guide my leadership. My one stipulation was the name. I grew up in Fifth Ward, not the greater Fifth Ward. As of 2020, we were officially a 501c3 functioning organization of founding members and a board of directors officially titled Fifth Ward Chamber of Commerce. We began to organize a detailed business plan designed for each member to complete despite the size and years in business. New entrepreneurs quickly realized that they were business components that were unknown to them but necessary. Existing businesses needed modification, and some entrepreneurs postponed their launch. We make every effort to provide resources for our members. It is important to the Fifth Ward Chamber to evaluate the businesses in the Fifth Ward. A database referencing 1,300 businesses located in the community has been circulating for years. The Chamber board members divided the list and canvassed the community individually in an effort to determine the number and type of businesses in our community. We discussed the outdated list. Many of the businesses listed didn't exist or is a listed corporation owning several properties occupied and unoccupied. We're currently planning a community business canvassing to introduce the Chamber to each business and provide an opportunity to share business needs. Our goal is to enlist volunteers from members and organizations to aid us with this initiative. Our presence in the community is essential as we transition from single-family dwellings to three-story townhomes. Developers began to purchase aired property in Fifth Ward over 15 years ago at auctions for delinquent property taxes. Often those taxes were less than $1,000 per year. My younger brother Tyrone formed a consulting firm 32 years ago, offering environmental consulting, engineering consulting, and construction support services. We moved the company to Fifth Ward in the former shoe shop 15 years ago. My role is Senior Environmental Manager overseeing environmental due diligence, environmental site assessments. As I verify property on the Harris County Appraisal District website, I noticed that the Fifth Ward properties 30 years ago were owned mostly by African American, 15 years ago, white and Hispanics. Currently, a vast majority of the property owned here in Fifth Ward is owned by foreigners. They rent the property until the selling price is substantial. One of the new developers in Fifth Ward purchased 200 lots over 10 years ago. No one was displaced. Property taxes on inherited property were in default, and he had a vision. We're still here. We're still encouraging others to remain in Fifth Ward. We will continue to sustain existing businesses, encourage new businesses to locate to our community, and launch an entrepreneurship program offering workshops. In closing, if we cultivate the past, present, and future, collectively we can preserve our presence here in the Fifth Ward community as it transitions. Furthermore, we can enjoy future amenities that we currently leave our community to enjoy.
Now, when I'm coaching storytellers, I actually discourage them from writing their stories down or using notes, because I really want the audience to feel like they're having an organic conversation. We don't want your fancy words, long sentences, and that kind of stuff. But along with Miss Dorian, this next storyteller said that he needed to write it down in order to keep it structured and flowing, and he didn't want to get sidetracked. And in our final coaching session, I heard the story, and it is absolutely lovely. Here to tell a legacy story, 1 mile from home, please welcome Damon Williams.
I'm a fourth generation son of Fifth Ward, born at St. Elizabeth Hospital just a mile from where I now live. It's an honor to share my story as a neighbor, a son, and an aspiring steward of a family legacy that began in the soil of this community. This story is called 1 mile from home because though I've lived a lot of other places, I've never belonged anywhere the same way that I've belonged like a mile from where I was born. I've lived in wealthier neighborhoods, but never in a richer community. I extend my heartfelt thanks to H. Mac and Alexis Browne and all of you who are here tonight honoring Fifth Ward stories. My father's favorite question to me whenever I told him that I'd met anybody of importance was, "You telling me my son?" So I'll tell you a little bit about who I am. Let me tell you a little bit about whom I come from. My great-grandfather, Lewis Etheridge, was the first caretaker of Finnegan Park. He and my great-grandmother Ruth lived and raised a family in what is now the Parks Community Center. Before we had a legacy, we had duties. Before we had cash, we had a community. This legacy of stewardship became my inheritance even when I didn't value it properly. My grandmother, Ruth, named after her mother, attended Phyllis Wheatley before entering into a mixed marriage. It was called mixed because my grandfather went to Jack Gates. It was a thing. It was a thing. My grandfather, Carl Williams, owned and operated a dry cleaner next to Jeff Spine Taylor, about 50 feet on the other side of this building. My father, Skip Williams, lived for several years in the Finnegan Park Field House. His bedroom was where the current park director's office is. He, like scores of other boys over generations, got his first job working for Papa Lou Dorian at C&L Shoe Sign on Lyons Avenue. My father went on to attend Phyllis Wheatley for a little while until he was sincerely encouraged to continue his educational exploits elsewhere due to a conflict of interest. He was interested in having fun. Like his father before him, he had been falling in love with a foreign girl. My mother attended Kashmir. So as a child, my family moved a lot. We lived in many parts of Houston and all over the place before we moved just across the Lockwood Bridge, Kashmir Gardens, where my mother's family was from. But while growing up, I was completely unaware that I was supposed to be underprivileged. There were always things our area didn't have, but nothing that I missed. My father was a hustler who both worked at the airport and ran clubs in 3rd Ward. And I was always taken by the glamour of the duality of how the judges, the hustlers, and the dreamers all danced under the same lights in 3rd Ward. It was common for them, but it was magical for me. My childhood was split between wards, and I thought that there was nothing possibly that could be better than growing up, getting rich, and living in a mansion on the bayou off McGregor Way. Couldn't tell me nothing better in the world. I needed to live better. I left Houston for the Navy the day after my 18th birthday. I got to see some of the world. Lived in California and Florida, Japan and Cuba. And I got to experience things that seemed to only exist a million miles away from St. Elizabeth Negro Hospital, where I began. The question that shaped my career, drove my ambition, and eventually led to a homecoming years later was always, what does better look like? So returning to Houston in my late 20s, I still moved all over town looking to find home. At nearly 50 years old, I had lived all over the city and I was still looking. Once again, looking for a better area. This time I was looking to the heights, from whence comes my help. For the answer to the question. But as legacy would have it, my then wife Janaea sent me a listing in 5th Ward on Panel Street.
Come on.
With much hesitation and strong trepidation, I agreed to look at the house. And she made the case that it was important for us to be an example for the kids in neighborhoods like where we grew up. So I relented. The house had been built as an affordable home by 5th Ward Community Redevelopment Corporation. So shout out to Pastor Clemens and Kathy Flanagan Payton. I walked through the door, took a very quick look around and said, we'll take it. Because it felt like home. In an amazing twist, it turned out that across the street lived Janaea's great aunt, whom she hadn't seen in decades. This was a home that her grandfather had lived in when he made his migration from being a sharecropper in Louisiana to Houston. From this, we learned that sometimes legacy moves for our understanding and catch up. Another truth is that legacy doesn't always come with curb appeal. In returning to 5th Ward, it came with tension. Panel Street had the tension of new home construction on one side and legacy homes on the other. The same building where my father had gone to E.O. Smith Junior High School was now where my youngest son attended Mickey Leland College Preparatory Academy for Young Men. Technology had advanced such that the problems of not being close to an H-E-B or a Kroger or not having a whole lot of restaurants nearby could easily be fixed with just an app. These tensions allowed me to see that living in Fifth Ward was not sacrificing amenities, and to see it as investing in the stewardship of a special place. I'll close with one of my favorite stories from that period. So a couple of days after we moved into our house, I'm standing outside when I heard the voice of a little girl calling, "Hey, neighbor." So I immediately understood the assignment and gave her a big smile and waved back. The words she yelled down the street next would define the next few years. "Hey, neighbor, you got candy?" And we did have a little candy in the house. But that little girl and her family became our neighbors, and we became part of the community. And we kept that candy dish full every day from then until moved away for a little while. So I moved to a George Jefferson deluxe apartment experience in the Heights for a year. Living there with the swimming pool and the luxury amenities and the area restaurants was nice. It was really nice. It also showed me that Fifth Ward was really home. So I chose to move back. Choosing to invest ourselves in our community isn't choosing legacy over luxury. It's choosing to belong rather than to just be beside. That sense of belonging is what drove me to found Mahogany, where we provide AI-powered financial coaching, capital and connections to help first-generation wealth builders like ourselves to leave financial legacy. So we end the story only a few blocks from where it began. I didn't have to move miles away to go far. I found everything I need to grow, to give, and to help guide others to leaving a legacy. Just 1 mile from home.
Comedian Steve Harvey joked about pastors raising money for the building fund. And he poked fun at money that was raised but never used for what he thought it was supposed to be used for. But that's not the case for this next storyteller. Although he's a pastor, he's not gonna preach to us, but he got a word. Here to tell a literacy desert story, please welcome Pastor Robert Thomas.
The year is 2012. I've been pastor of the Olive Missionary Baptist Church for 8 years, and the news media is slaughtering our schools, Cashmere and Wheatley. They're receiving bad grades. They're talking about a state takeover. You'll probably see a picture of me when I was 5. I think it's my 5th birthday party. I was with my grandmother, who taught me to read at her apron strings. And because she taught me to read, I've gone on to do some really cool things because I had literacy poured into me early, along with switches and Bible verses. And as the media is having this onslaught and they're talking about our community, I'm the pastor, our church and our community development corporation had bought land, and we had land and a building, and I'm saying, Lord, what can we do? Our kids, there's a history of literacy in the family. They're great and wonderful people who come from this area. We're not, I know, we're a food desert. We're a retail desert. We don't have amenities in the area. We're a healthcare desert. We're a lot of things, but we're not a literacy desert. We're great and wonderful, smart, intelligent, problem-solving, overcoming, bombastic, achieving people in the Fifth Ward. What can we do about this? And so I get, as pastors do, we get revelations. God tells us things. Sometimes we tell y'all think we're nuts. But I believe it's Dr. King that said, start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. So one of the parcels of land that we had a building on it. This building didn't look like much. We really didn't have great plans for it. We've got other economic development plans, but as we're going through this, I get the revelation. Use that building, use the land. Okay, what do we do with it? I'm going through a personal transition at the time. I'm a bivocational pastor, so I was working full-time as well as pastoring full-time. And I had been demoted from a job that I had been excellent in for 13 years and put back on a high school campus. I call it my Elijah cave time. Some of you who are Bible readers, you go back and look at that. Elijah knew what God told him. He got banished to a cave for 3 years and he was fed by a raven, by a babbling brook. And so I call this my 3-year cave time. And during that time, this revelation came. Use the land and use the building. I said, well, what are we going to do with it? And God said, make it a bookstore. I said, bookstores everywhere. We don't need a bookstore. We need something to help with literacy in the fifth corner. He said, make it a bookstore. But don't make it a bookstore with books. I said, okay, God, I'm going to tell people we're going to have a bookstore with no books in it. He said, no. Make it an electronic. Technology. I said, I got it. An e-bookstore where you read with implements and not actual books. And so I have the idea. I start contacting universities and they tell me, no. I contact U of H and they say no, but contact the design build master's program. I get in touch with Dr. Susan Rogers. I take her my crude little paper model that I've been working on in my cave time. She looks at it, she hears the idea, she said, let's go. And so we get the students in this design build project to come up with this really cool design. I think they're going to show y'all that as well. They make what's like a rib or skeleton structure that'll slide into this old building that we have. And it's this wonderful thing. And so we do it, the kids do it, they manufacture it, they set it up at the Conrad Hilton School of Architecture, sitting there for a whole month. The AIA in Houston gives us an award. USC Diversity Award, they give us an award. We set up a GoFundMe page, man, we're on our way. We're gonna have an e-bookstore, first of the kind in this country. If nobody has one, look, man, we're gonna be on the map. We go GoFundMe. We raise $8,000 to get a container because we don't have a building repaired yet. We got to store it. And the whole initiative goes flat. Nothing. Crickets. Heartbroken. Dumbfounded. I look foolish. I said, God, I told you, I did what you told me to do. What gives? And God is silent. Any of you who trust God, you go silent sometimes. Fast forward, 2022, I'm at a meeting with a lady that I don't know, she doesn't know me, telling me, I had this project I was working on. This lady's a grant writer. She's a prolific grant writer. She said, I need to sit down with you and help you with your grant. We need to write a grant for your bookstore. I said, oh, cool. Okay, God's coming through again. We write the grant. We get support from all kinds of folks whose names you would know if I called them out. We also don't get support from some folks whose names you would know if I called them out. And so we apply for this grant, but in the process of applying for the grant, I have to do some history on this building that we own. And I find out the building has a past. Preachers love past. There's a redemption story in everybody's past. Everybody got a past. So I look and we find out this building is over 100 years old. Okay, cool. We don't have a lot of 100-year-old structures in Houston. We tear them down. So cool, we're going to preserve this building. And then I look further, and the history of the building, it was a cafe. Okay, it was a beer joint. It was the M&S Cafe. It was Juanita's Place. It was John's Beer. It was the Honey Love Cafe. And then in 1957, Mr. Olean and Evie Dunford acquired the property, and it was the poor man's cafe, operated for 20 plus years. Mr. Dunford owned a bunch of businesses in the Fifth Ward at the time. And as a matter of fact, a gentleman attacked his wife in the club, cafe, beer joint. And Mr. Dunford had to defend his wife's honor. And the gentleman didn't survive. And he was free because of what happened. He didn't go to jail or anything. But Mr. Dunford owned a record shop. He owned a real estate company. He owned a lumber yard. And he owned a driving school. And as I do my research, it says Mr. Dunford gave Blacks who could not read or write an opportunity to get their chauffeur's license. So you know what passed at me right about then? I was looking for my organist, because I needed an organist to tune it up right about there, so you could close that sermon. How horrible would it be if literacy was excited and expectant in 1957, that we couldn't get excited about a library 72 years later in 2025? So then you ask yourself the question, Robert, what does it have to do with us? Well, this whole night has been about restoring the story. And so you now know the story of the building we own at 3109 Farmer that used to be the M&S Cafe, John's Beer, Juanita's Place, the Honey Love Cafe, and the Poor Man's Cafe, but also the connection that it had to Dunford's driving school and the literacy that was performed for those individuals who could not read and write, but would be taught to so that they might be able to earn for their families. So what do I want you to do? I want you to retell the story of why we need a library in the 5th Ward. In 2014, the library here in the 5th Ward closed because of Hurricane Harvey. We've gone that long without having a library in our community. Libraries are not just places where you get books. Libraries are places that disseminate information. They give computer usage to people who don't have that opportunity. It's a repository for information to be distributed to the community. And it's part of a bigger plan that we have for economic development on this end of Lyons Avenue. And so we need your help in telling the story. As the story continues to be told, it will fall on the right ears, and eventually it will fall on the right heart that's fertile to make literacy an immediate and pressing need that they need to address. So I just ask you tonight to consider this: the long legacy of accomplishments of all the individuals that lived, grew up, worked, played in this neighborhood called 5th Ward. You might not be a George Foreman. You might not be a Dr. Ruth Simmons. You might not be a Mickey Leland. You might not even be a pastor with a dream. Do y'all still dream?
Yeah.
I dream in Technicolor. And I can see myself walking out of the front door of our church and looking at the 5th Ward Museum that's directly across the street from us, and then going around the corner to the library, the 5th Ward Library, that sits right next to the 5th Ward Museum. How does that happen? It happens by you continuing to remind yourself that each of us have a part to play in the long history and living legacy of literacy in the 5th Ward.
Pastor Thomas touched on the takeover of HIC schools. These takeovers are often tethered to a school performance as it's measured in test scores and things. And when you only look at test scores, you get a skewed idea of the intelligence of many of our students, especially the way that Life on Life's terms tries to limit their potential. Here to give us the backstory on being academically gifted in 5th Ward, please welcome our final storyteller for this evening, David Landry, as he shares a student's story.
I am a product of 5th Ward, Houston, Texas. Let me start off by saying that growing up with my mom and who I call grandma and grandpa, they were actually my great aunt and uncle. In the Black community, when you have an older aunt, you call them grandma and grandpa. And we have an older cousin, they're your aunt and uncle. So my great aunt and my great uncle, who I will call grandma and grandpa throughout this story, are very integral. You see, they taught me how to read. And I began reading very early, around the age of 3. And my mother picked up on that. She also picked up on the fact that I knew my address, 2603 Quitman, and my phone number, 2244801. At that time, you didn't have to have an area code on the front. So she said, now that you have this information, go forth and go to school. So I started pre-K, and the very first school that I attended was Langston Elementary on the corner of Quitman and Jensen. I started school there, pre-K, kindergarten, and after I graduated from kindergarten, I found out that our school would be closed down because the test scores were low. My mom, being the industrious parent that she was, found out about a school a little bit more north than our community. It was called the Theodore Roosevelt Vanguard School. And my mom said, we're gonna go take this test. So we go to the school, meet the principal, we sit down in a little classroom, and he puts a packet in front of me with a pencil, number 2. And I'm taking this test. It's got math problems on it. It's got words that I need to define. And it also has spatial puzzles that I needed to solve. So we took the test, we leave, we hop on the bus, and we go back home. A few days later, my mom finds out I got accepted into the school. Made it into Roosevelt Vanguard School. And I think the mascot was the Bears. And I was excited to be a Bear. Because as we're reading the brochure, we're finding out that not only are we learning math and science and language arts, but we're also doing art and music and all these other things that the gifted and talented students in the district got a chance to take part in. My mom even bought a lunch kit for me in my favorite color with 2 of my favorite video game characters, Mario Brothers and The Legend of Zelda. It even had a matching thermos on the inside. And I got to bring my favorite sandwiches and chips. I was ready to start school. But 2 days into my schooling, my grandpa got sick. He had a stroke. And he was my only ride to the school, and my mother wasn't gonna put me on a bus by myself. She worked on the southwest side, and this school was all the way on the north side. And so I had to leave. So then my mother found another school. She found Crawford Elementary. So we go to Crawford, 1st grade through 4th. My 2nd grade teacher, proud Black woman, her name was Miss Kelly. She was the first person to tell us that Columbus didn't discover America. My 3rd and 4th grade teacher, the same woman, her name is Miss Garcia. We still keep in touch to this day through social media. She was the one, though I was a voracious reader, she was the one that was able to make books come alive. Miss Garcia was a woman from Lansing, Michigan, tall, statuesque, red hair, spoke fluent Spanish. So when I would hear her read about the history of Texas that we had to learn in 4th grade, the words like cabeza de vaca and estabanico rolled off of her tongue and made those characters come to life in my mind. I then transferred to Betsy Ross Elementary for 5th grade. Went to Betsy Ross, very proud, had a teacher there, Miss Hall, didn't play no games. And she was the one that taught me math. Still not a math person to this day, but I did enough to get out. And so as school continues on for me, I go to middle school, I get to high school, and I'm in high school. My mom, again, the industrious parent, picks up on the fact that I'm into being a doctor and wanting to go to medical school. So she finds a school called DeBakey, High School for Health Professions, and I had to take another test. So I show up at the school, she drops me off, I get to the place where we're taking this test to figure out if I'm good enough to be accepted. And I get in. But about a year and a half, I realized, being a medical doctor is not really for me. So then I go to my dedicated home school, my zone school, which is now called Northside High, but it used to be named after the president of the Confederacy, Jefferson Davis. So I finished there, but I graduate, I go to college, I get my bachelor's degree, University of St. Thomas. I end up graduating from there and doing well, right? Because of that reinforcement that I got, the village that is this community. In closing, I want to share a story, a dream that I had. And in this dream, I'm in my house, 2603 Quitman, and I look out the window and I see a dilapidated building that had always been there. Something compelled me to walk outside of my home, and I walk across the street, and I walk into this dilapidated building. But as I approach, I could hear music getting louder and louder. And when I opened the front door, the music blasted, hit me in my chest. And it was people sitting down and eating and drinking and laughing and having a great time, cavorting. There were even two dogs running in circles in the middle of the floor. And there were children playing. And I looked, and before I could ask where this place was or what this was all about, I wake up. A few days later, one of my aunts, my mother's sister, her name was Terrell, comes to our house, and she said, and I said to her, Aunt Terrell, because she's the historian of the family, by the way. So I asked her, I said, Aunt Terrell, I had a dream the other night, and I know you would know this, but I need to ask you a question. She said, ask away. I said, do you know anything about that building across the street that's dilapidated now and no activity, nothing's going on there? I had a dream about that place. She said, oh, you don't know about the cafe? Cafe? What's that all about? She said, your grandma used to run a cafe right across the street from this house, and she fed people from far and wide. There was even a steel processing factory right up the road going west on Quitman, and when the guys would clock out for lunch, they would all come and eat her food. She was the pride of that block. I said, wait, well, what's up with all the dogs? There were two dogs running into my dream. She said, oh, nobody ever told you about Queenie and Bandit? Like, who's Queenie and Bandit? Oh, those were Grandma and Grandpa's dogs. There were two boxers, purebred. And my grandma was what they called back in that day a barren woman. She wasn't able to have children on her own, but they loved those dogs like they were their children. Queenie and Bandit would ride in the back of my grandpa's drop-top Cadillac, red candy paint on the outside, cream on the inside. And they'd ride through town like nobody's business. I said, well, what happened to the dogs? I said, well, there was a person that was jealous and wanted to break into the cafe one night, and they threw stakes that were laced with antifreeze over the gate. I said, well, what happened to the cafe? Why don't we have that business in our family anymore? And my Terrell was like, well, your grandma would make the money during the day, and then Grandpa would come at the end of the night, clean out the register, put the money in his pocket, and drive off in that red candy paint Cadillac drop top. Spend it all. And she got tired of making that money and doing that work and feeding those people with nothing to show for it. And so sadly, the place closed down. I get to college, I go back for my master's because I'm working, and I realize that this bachelor's degree ain't enough. And so I go back to school, my alma mater, University of St. Thomas, pursuing a degree in drama. And while I'm there, I realize, oh, in order for me to graduate, I gotta do a master's thesis. I'm not much for writing papers, but I'm a man of the theater. And so I wrote a script about my life called Optimistic. My director was a white man, and the only reason why that he told me, the only reason why that he wanted to direct my show was because he wanted to learn about Black people. He made a statement one day, he said that, you made it out, you won, you didn't become a statistic. But as he said that, it kind of sat with me weird, because all I could hear was tokenism. You made it out. But I didn't feel that way, and I had to immediately tell him, hey, don't put me in that position of being a token. Black people are not a monolith. And I come from a village that has reinforced me and has made me the man who I am today. Postscript, wearing a t-shirt, class bookstore. A few years ago, my wife and I have the harebrained idea during the pandemic to start a bookstore. It's called Class. We started it online, and we did pop-ups for 2 years after that, and we were blessed to get keys to a space. You probably saw that. You probably saw a flyer before the storytellers came out. That is our bookstore. In a nutshell, we are currently in the 3rd ward. Yes, I know. But I would love for you to come visit. And I would love for you to see and feel the love and the vibe that 5th Ward put into me. And we're sharing a little bit there. So, Class Bookstore is here. We're here for you. And we hope to see you soon.
All right, we're going to bring out all of our storytellers this evening. Please, everyone, join me on the stage. Just give them a warm round of applause for all of the ways that they have really trusted me with their stories, with the whole experience. It was vulnerable. Thank you. I wanted to just say again, thank you so much to the Houston Museum of African American Culture for this opportunity. Thank you to everyone who came out. Please support the museum. Mm-hmm. There was a notice, a flyer on the current exhibitions that are running in the museum, and it's always free, Wednesday to Saturday, but donations are absolutely warmly appreciated and accepted. There's also some merch outside if you want to support us that way as well. And thank you so much, Ella Russell for Crumville, Texas Bakery, who was out there selling sub cups and brownies and cookies. So please patronize there. And finally, October 25th and 26th, my original script, Dignity, is going to be featured in the Uprise Experience Houston Black Theater Week, which will be right in this space. Nice. Saturday and Sunday, October 25th and 26th. I love hearing these true first-person stories. I love telling true first-person stories, but I absolutely love when I get to creatively imagine what if and do all the things. Telling stories about the sweetness of Black girls and the compassion of Black women, and how one way that we will always show up in every milieu, every context, it is with dignity. So come and check us out. Thank you so much again for coming out tonight. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you to our online audience. We certainly appreciate you. God bless and have a good night.
I'm good.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. I was in your way. Excuse me.
So that's online.
Yes, ma'am.
I see. I do remember. I see the cars and